Hello, everyone. Are you ready for the next round? Yeah, I like it. You're still there. I was wondering after such a long time. Okay, hi, I'm Stephanie Hauer. I am partner at Naturie. I am a mother of two and a podcaster. So where are we right now after 1.5 days in this room with this community? We have the same goal. We're aligned behind one very important goal. We have lots of smart, caring people. We know how to manage carbon. We have learned how to manage biodiversity, more or less. We're getting there. So everything seems to be on the right track. But it's not. It's just not enough what we have been doing. If you imagine that of all the man-made emissions this year, we will be able to compensate how much, do you know, in percent? Does anybody want to try? Give it a try. So it's less than 1% of the man-made emissions. But as you know, this planet has tipping points, and there are a lot of tipping points right now that we, I guess, have already crossed. And you see that parts of the Earth, more and more parts of this wonderful Earth, turn from a carbon sink to a carbon emitter. And 93% of the extra heat that we are producing is being absorbed by the oceans. But this is not going to last. So what do we need? And why do I have the feeling that we are not there yet, that we haven't talked about everything, even after 1.5 days? You know, there is one thing, I think it all comes down to one thing, and that's money. We have to find a way to combine our ambitions with respect to nature and the fact that money rules the world. Or at least you have to find very good competitive advantages for your corporation, also to align all your stakeholders in the company, in your organization behind it, and make them all go in the right direction. So what we are aiming here is to find a system. We're aiming at finding a system where it is more profitable to create nature, to restore nature, than to destroy it. And we're not far away from that, as you will see. So we're working on business models that will turn the companies that you represent, the companies that you consult, into not just the best companies in the world, but the best companies for the world. And let me be clear here. The biggest threat to our planet is our belief that somebody else will take care of it. So you now have 3 options for yourself and the people around you that you are helping to get in the right direction. Number 1, you can develop your very own nature-based solutions, and we will have a partner here, a corporation, a very big one, that shows us how that works. And then we will have the second option for you. It's to find an expert that helps you along the way, understand your supply chain, understand how you affect the ecosystem services, and how the ecosystem services make you dependent on them. So how that works in both directions and how you can reduce the footprint. And finally, we have another option, and I want you to consider all the 3 options. You might as well give your money into a financial product that derives the returns from nature, and we will see how that works. So whatever you do, I'm really urging you, I'm begging you, put your money, put your love, put your time, put all your efforts where you want the world to go and where the world needs to go. So let us say hi to the 3 guests here. First of all, an American in Paris. Sam, who are you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Lampert. I'm an investment director with Mirova. where I focus on nature-based solutions, in particular working with corporates and other investors on how to finance projects that lead to long-term sustainable goals in nature rejuvenation. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. We'll hear more from you afterwards. Yune, you have come a very long way. She has come all the way from South Korea to be here with you, sitting on that panel. I think you should say hi to her.
Hi. Thank you. So 14 hours flight. It was a very long trip. And then I'm here with my mom. And then it's really great opportunity to see everybody who is working carbon and then for the nature-based solutions. My name is Yune, who is a project leader for SK Forest. SK Forest is part of the SK Group, which is the second largest company in South Korea with more than 160 billion profits and more than 300 subsidiaries branches over the world. And then I'm working as a project leader for particularly for regional Vietnam Red Plus project.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yes, hello, Amsterdam. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm a founder, co-founder of Nature Capital in Switzerland. And besides, I'm father of 5 wonderful girls between 18 years and about 18 days, which makes me think a lot about the heritage of our generation. And yeah, so I tell you later on why and how I founded Nature.
Why don't we start now, Daniel? Choose only one master. Nature was by Rembrandt. That was to kick you off. I was promising our audience lots of things like the big business models. Do you have a business model that works? Do you have a business model that makes it more profitable to invest in nature than to destroy it?
I hope so. Seeing that, choose only one nature, only one master nature. Said by Rembrandt. I know another quote, unfortunately I don't know anymore who said it, but it was something like cutting down the rainforest for food production is as we would take a Rembrandt to light a fireplace. So this is, I think it's more than 10 years old. And of course, that's super sad that we have seen that already during the last years that this is still happening. And I started 10 years ago to fight against the loss of nature and the loss of the rainforest by investing into land plots in Colombia, a beautiful area at the Pacific coast. Who knows Colombia a bit better? It's at the Chocó. Oh, there's one. Great. It's at the Pacific coast. It's like really looks like paradise. But there was a neighbor cutting down the trees for getting some space for his cows, etc. And I've chosen to take his plots and to regenerate nature in this area, which has worked surprisingly well. So I learned at school that once you cut down the trees and the soil gets eroded, etc., it's going to be difficult to recover that. I found it surprisingly easy by a bundle of soft measurements. We restored nature. We cooperated there with South Pole. I guess most of you would know that company. So over the time, we have seen nature comes back hugely. The question I was asking myself then is, of course, my personal funds were limited and will always be, but how would we copy the same thing 100 or 1,000 times as we need it? So I watched at the carbon price it and calculated back and forth, and one point in time reached a level where I said, yes, I mean, with having a mature carbon market, having a certain price for the ton of carbon, it is definitely possible to restore an entire ecosystem like we did, just by getting the revenues of the carbon market. So what finally is missing and I was working for banks and insurers the last 10 years. What was missing was a financial product around that you just put the money there and get the return out of projects like that. I've seen earlier today that there are now options for smallhold farmers to go into that direction, which I found super interesting. So 10 years ago, I was a smallhold farmer, so to say, urgently needing such a solution. Today, there was there, but we also see that many of the farmers also want to sell their land because they have a handover problem within the family. The younger generation doesn't want to work as a farmer anymore. So our model is a bit different to what we heard earlier on. So we choose land plots to acquire as an asset manager. We collect funds, we buy land plots, we do the entire end-to-end process from buying the land plots, doing the regeneration projects, doing the certification and selling the carbon credits, and we get back with a very reasonable return. We noticed that asking some family offices, private investors, etc., they are actually quite surprised how well that works, and that we can come back with a double-digit return on their investment, net, pure, 15 years long.
So they give you the money, you buy land with it,
Yes.
and from the carbon credits that you get out of the growth of nature, you pay them the return.
Exactly.
Okay. Why don't we have a look at a video that we just produced, and you might recognize the woman on the horse. Can we see the video, please?
Nature Re has acquired its first pieces of degraded land in the region of Antioquia, Colombia. Due to previous use for cattle ranching, the natural ecosystem has been severely affected. Trees were chopped down regularly, and the soil was treated with chemicals to create pasture. For every single cow, more than a hectare of nature was sacrificed. This way of using land was both highly inefficient and destructive for the environment. Now, through the world-leading expertise of our operating partner, South Pole, we will assist natural regrowth processes. Over time, birds and rodents will spread seeds that will enable biodiversity to flourish again. Pastures will be able to regrow bushes, and bushes will create a new habitat for forests to thrive and capture massive amounts of CO2. The natural regeneration will enable local species like hummingbirds, capuchin monkeys, parrots, and jaguars to inhabit the area once again. From the start, local communities will be involved in the project. Besides creating sustainable jobs in the region, Nature Re will focus on investments in education. Follow us on our journey to restore nature, capture carbon emissions, and support local communities. Nature Re. Invest in nature. Remove carbon at scale.
Okay, that was before I fell off the horse, I must say. I've just come back from Colombia, and I can tell you that it was mind-blowing, life-changing to see how fast the trees grow. You can actually watch them grow. It's like 6 times as fast as what we have here. And then it was going through a zoo with so many animals and plants I had never heard of. And it's amazing, you heard that we have been having cattle there, and that means that for one cow, you destroy the habitat of 1 hectare full of animals and plants. You cannot imagine how many animals, millions or billions, you kill just by having that 1 cow. So Daniel, just one question. We saw those beautiful animals We've only talked about actually plants and trees that they grow and produce carbon credits. Is there any business model around those wonderful rare animals that are almost going extinct in that region?
Well, today indirectly, because what we see is, for example, you have seen the jaguar. I've one or two also in my plots. You see, as long as they exist, or other way around, as soon as they come back, they kind of change again the order, how the entire ecosystem works. So you see that as long as the jaguar is there, the population of the bigger cats, wild cats around, is under control. If not, they would kill too many rodents, which we again need to spread the seeds, etc. So it's of course quantifiable. Also, the value a jaguar puts into an ecosystem. Still, we are not having like something like biodiversity credits also in our business case. So we expect this going to be developed very relatively quickly. We heard a lot about that, but we don't need them necessarily for our business case to be healthy.
But the carbon credit is still like a workaround, because once the jaguars come back, they, as you said, they change the ecosystem in a way that it, how it was supposed to be, and you have more rodents taking care of their jobs, spreading seeds, spreading nuts, whatever. So the more jaguars you have in a habitat, the faster the growth of the trees, the more diverse the trees that you have in the system, the more money you make with the carbon credits.
That's true.
So a jaguar can be part of a business model in its own right, in fact. And
Absolutely right.
We are working on that. Okay, thank you so far. Sam, what are you telling companies that want to invest in nature-based solutions? Where do they have to start? And how does that become a business model after all?
So I think the most obvious answer to that is you start at home, right? That we look at our investors, we're looking at companies and corporates that have made credible commitments to kind of climate and nature goals, and that includes kind of maximizing to the extent possible the reductions that they can already achieve through their own value chains. And I think that's an incredibly important part, because we will invest in projects. These projects will have enormous impact for environment and climate, and still that will not be enough unless you overall change the fundamental system. So in kind of first thing you always start with is thinking about ways to do insourcing and insetting and other types of activities to reduce the carbon emissions at home. Beyond that, when you start thinking about projects, I think you can think about it both from a supply and from a demand side. We are increasingly bullish on the supply. We find a lot of take heart in the commitments that corporations have made around it. I think often these commitments take the forms of CEOs kind of standing up in Davos and kind of making very proud statements. And now we're very actively engaged in talking to CFOs and saying, okay, that engagement, if you're saying that you have hundreds of millions of tons of carbon every year, and we think of an average price of carbon will be between $10 and $50 a ton, that's a very, very significant financial commitment. And so on the supply side, we're seeing a huge interest in finding new ways of financing these projects. I think that has been unlocked by financial innovations, whether it's around kind of carbon credits or increasingly biodiversity credits as kind of a next sustainable wave around it.
So what is your argument? Is that a direct link or only an indirect link between the efforts on the one hand and the financial results of a company?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think about it indirect or direct. I mean, I think obviously the companies that we're working with have business models that are successful independent of investments that they're making to support nature. They are also, as was pointed out in some of the earlier sessions, at enormous risk for climate change, and that is definitely part of what they're thinking through. But that is not, and that is really around how they think about their own internal value change. But when they're investing with us, they're thinking through how they can do projects that are really around nature regeneration, often in geographies where they have current activities, but not exclusively. They're thinking globally in scope. I think the question would be around kind of how do you design these projects so that they have high integrity, so that they are able to produce impact at scale, and are able to not just think through only kind of one narrow element of nature, but holistically across all the different questions of nature.
All the different questions. Okay, that brings me to one of my favorite companies, actually. In my podcast, I'm going to feature them in the next episode. It's L'Oréal, one of your customers. And what makes L'Oréal so special, it's not just a company that talks about emissions, but they have a strategy around all of the 9 planetary boundaries, like water, and of course biodiversity and other aspects. How do you turn that into a project? How does that work?
So I obviously won't speak to L'Oréal and their policies around it. I think with that said, I'm very, very proud that Mirova manages the L'Oréal Fund for Nature Regeneration, which is a fund that is focusing around how you can do project finance around in a way that is catalytic within the nature markets. And so on that, what we are focusing really is how we can use capital that has a very, very high risk tolerance to unlock new markets. We're investing in blue carbon, thinking through mangroves, so globally around the world, helping develop that as an asset class. We're also actively investing in biodiversity credits and things around how do you help that emerge, and so that over time, you're able to sustain investments in nature, where even if technology or other approaches emerge that allows us to remove carbon to the atmosphere.
Where's the link to the supply chain of the products that we all know from L'Oréal?
I think the answer is that it's twofold. I think, and again, I wouldn't want to speak for L'Oréal, but I think from my conversations with them, obviously there is L'Oréal sources their products globally and has very, very strong commitments to those regions. And so part of what they're looking at is how we can identify innovative projects that are operating in those regions that have enormous benefits for biodiversity. At the same time, I think there is a recognition by all the corporates that we speak to that nobody is working in this space alone, that they take landscape approaches, that they are thinking about how they collaborate with other partners, and particularly with the L'Oréal Fund for Nature Regeneration, thinking through how it can be a catalytic fund that encourages other co-investment from other actors going on in this space. And so I think that's a little bit.
And when would you say a project is a success? What is the measurement?
It's a good question. I think from there's obviously the easy answer, right? Which is that you are able to build a project that is sustainable over time and that can succeed without needing kind of additional investment in capital. I think beyond that, this question of success is very much linked to the intent of the investors. That can be around the ability to remove carbon from the atmosphere. That can be around restoring ecosystems and introducing cornerstone species like the jaguar. That can be around thinking through how it's a demonstration effect. And so yes, you have one successful project and now you actually have 100 projects that follows. And it really kind of varies depending on what your impact thesis is for that project.
What keeps companies from doing that? Are they afraid of risks? I mean, they do that to protect their reputation, but doing it can also be difficult for the reputation if you don't do it right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody is concerned with risks for various ways, and we'd be naive to kind of say, oh, there's no risks here. There's certainly risks for not acting. I think we've seen kind of public conversations around the need to engage far more in nature investments. I think that is driving from a customer perspective, but also very much from an employee perspective. So then there's a risk of intervening and either having negative consequences or being perceived as having negative consequences. I think part of what we do as an asset manager is provide kind of a framework for understanding those risks, applying very, very rigorous ESG standards so that you can think through how you can at least identify what the reputational risks might be and try to minimize them. But then also thinking through how you diversify your portfolio across a number of different projects so that you're able to think through the financial risks. And finally, from some of we have experience in this space, a really good example of it is when you're doing a prepayment for carbon. The carbon markets have been growing very, very fast. And so as a result, a price per ton that might have seemed reasonable, 2-3 years ago, and now is being sold on the spot market at 5, 10, 15 times that original price. And then you have a reputational risk around what is the exposure, what is the sharing of that benefit, and why all of a sudden you have all of this money being kind of moving into kind of European and American investors as opposed to within the communities where the project took place. And I think that is a legitimate criticism, and designing investments so that you do have benefit sharing from the beginning, and so that as the price of carbon and as the carbon markets improve, you have some of that benefit goes back, and the majority of that benefit goes back to local communities, is a key part of the design of how you minimize those risks overall.
So say 1 or 2 years after they published their commitments, they said they want to do it, and they started doing it. What is their first experience? Is there something like a reality shock? Or are they surprised?
You might be able to speak to that better than me.
We'll get
but
you
I think from talking, many of the conversations I have is with companies that have tried to do this on their own, and have really struggled with some of the complexity associated with it. The complexity around origination and finding kind of interesting opportunities, as well as the complexity with really structuring designs. I think often we work extensively with kind of organizations that used to be NGOs, and are now looking at projects as a sustainable source to fund their activities. And that is a really difficult transition. And being a bridge is a hard and time-consuming activity around it. And so I think that is kind of, if you say what is the first experience, is coming face to face with kind of the realities on the ground and the challenges of these investments.
Let me ask one last question about the numbers. So we see how many hectares, millions, billions of hectares we're destroying. An average project with an important company, how many hectares of land can they restore or protect? What is a size that comes to mind?
I think that's
What are we talking about here?
I think that's a difficult question. I mean, I think because you have a perspective on that which is around scale, and then you're thinking, 20 to 100,000 hectares is this kind of a good-sized project where you start to think about what can be done. And then if you have on the way other side of the equation, you want to be working with small and local communities where it's kind of that type of scale activities just doesn't make sense. And so I think the answer is that you do want to be developing a diversified portfolio that cuts all the way across and allows you to do the kind of the full range. I think from my perspective, from an environmental impact perspective, you want to see at least 1,000 hectares as a minimum size to actually see some sort of ecosystem restoration as kind of a key kind of metric and a key way to thinking about it. I also think from an economic perspective, we're seeing somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 is kind of the absolute minimum of what can be done.
Okay. Yone, you have already protected and restored 4,600 hectares over the last 50 years, I must say. The SK Group, they do like energy and semiconductors. It's a multi-international, multi-industry company. But how come you have taken care of forests in South Korea?
Oh, okay, thank you. As part of the SK Group, SK Forest was founded with reforestation commitment and with a mission of those who love countries planting trees. So we just purchased the bare land, which has been degraded and damaged during the Korean War. And we, yes, as you said, you mentioned, we regenerated more than 5,000 hectares of lands by afforestation, and also planting more than 4 million trees. So with our contribution to greening the country, SK Forest was the first corporation that received President Award.
So
in
that was
2010.
also land that was destroyed during the war back in the days. And you did that for many years, for decades actually, and never had a business model. But now you want to be a leader in forest management.
Exactly, building on the expertise in sustainable forest management and afforestation in domestic areas. We also wanted to expand our businesses into landscaping architecture, but currently we are really trying too hard to lead in the forestry sector by focusing, investing and developing carbon projects domestically and globally.
Okay, so you want to be the leader within your country when it comes to forest management, and you want to create like something like a platform
Yes.
for carbon credit trading.
Yes, we are currently working with the government of Korea, Ministry of Environment and Korea Forest Service to establish the carbon platform that connect the government and individual private forest owners in South Korea, and the individual carbon credit buyers, including companies. So it applies to individual level carbon trading system in South Korea.
So you will not only have the carbon credits for your own companies, but you install a system so that everybody can use it, and the landowners can profit from it, and other companies.
Exactly, that is expected to generate forest-based revenue streams, also contribute to the Korea's NDC commitment.
But that will not be enough for you, so you also invest internationally.
Exactly, internationally. So currently, we are working, SK Forest is working with Sri Lanka, agroforestry project with a project developer, Serendi Asset. Lucky is here. So agroforestry project, so with a long-term view, we are waiting and work with the partners. Sri Lanka case is not really good. The country, faced economic and political crisis. But she and then her team is finding really good way, innovative way, not only working with the private, forest owners or plantation owners, but working with the government authorities. And Vietnam, we are working in a different approaches. We are directly working with the Vietnamese government. So I frequently go to the Vietnam to talk about the regional Red Plus project in northern provinces. So it's always waiting, and then, all the consultation processes, a lot of work there, and then involving direct governance relations and then managing all the different types of activities.
And how many hectares are we talking here?
Here for Vietnam, it's depending on the case by case, but we are currently completed our feasibility studies, so more than 1 million hectares. But it's big, but it's only feasibility study stage. So once to estimate the carbon potential and then prices and then what kind of benefits to be generated from the northern provinces, but at the actual implementation and intervention areas, so we will find the kind of suitable ways, only focusing on huge degradation areas in consultation with the government of Vietnam and also local provinces and all the community leaders, step by step, following all the procedures.
It's a great initiative. Thank you so much. Daniel, could you say a little bit about numbers? What is the midterm, the long-term perspective? What is possible? How could we scale the business?
What we know best is, of course, Colombia, where we started our first projects, and we see there about 10 million hectares of land that's not properly used, which is not totally degraded, but should be useful space for us for our nature regeneration projects. Of course, we know we cannot acquire all that land, and even if so, if you really think it through, how much workers we would need, we would really quickly be largest employer in Colombia. So of course we look into other geographies. Of course we look into Brazil, which is in all senses maybe factor 10 larger, more opportunities, etc. So I would say that overall, with the partners we have and the geographies and knowledge we have, we could scale up to, let's say, 5 to 10 million hectares during the next couple of years.
Okay, and we urgently need that. Can I still take one question, or shall we do that in the lunch? Okay, then I invite everyone to come to us for the questions, say thank you to my panel, and enjoy the break. See you afterwards.